Have you ever been completely surrounded by people, standing right in the middle of a crowded room, yet felt exactly like a visitor from a country no one else has ever been to? It's this very specific, deeply existential kind of isolation. You aren't physically alone, but psychologically, you feel entirely unrecognized. You're carrying a level of awareness that makes your experience of reality fundamentally untranslatable to the collective group around you. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to look at the fascinating psychology behind why you feel this way, and more importantly, how to actually master it.
Let me ask you to pause and be brutally honest with yourself for a second. How many times have you sat at a family dinner table or a corporate meeting, feeling exactly like you're watching a play where everyone else forgot their lines? Like you're literally the only one who actually read the script. It is so deeply exhausting. You see outcomes months before they arrive, you know exactly who is in pain behind their perfectly rehearsed smile, and you sense all that tension that everyone else is just pretending doesn't exist. It can feel like this incredibly heavy, isolating burden. But here's the truth. You aren't broken.
Section 1. The Theory. Differentiated Perception.
Okay, let's really dive into this. If you've always been told that you overthink things, or maybe people say you're just too intense or too sensitive, well, you're going to be fascinated by Carl Jung's findings. Jung called this capacity differentiated perception. It isn't magic, it's actually an advanced, highly tuned form of unconscious pattern recognition. While everyone else in the room is merely listening to the spoken words, your nervous system is actively decoding the unsaid reality. You're picking up on the unspoken tension, the micro-expressions, that slight little delay before someone answers a question, and all those hidden motives lingering just beneath the surface. Now, what's really interesting about this is a brilliant, albeit slightly brutal, distinction that the modern self-help industry gets entirely wrong. Society loves to casually label people as an empath or highly sensitive, but according to Jung's data, while a solid 20% of the population is emotionally sensitive, meaning they feel deeply, true introverted intuitives, the ones who actually possess differentiated perception, make up only about 1% of the population. Being sensitive means you feel deeply. Differentiated perception means you see clearly. Basically, society can easily tolerate the 20% who feel deeply. Because hey, everyone loves a good cry, but it is absolutely terrified of the 1% who see clearly.
Let's move to Section 2 and see how this builds. The agitation, the managed blindness trap.
So why does this incredible clarity cause so much pushback from the human groups you try to belong to? Well, to understand your isolation, you have to understand a foundational rule of group dynamics. Jung observed that every healthy group, whether we're talking about your immediate family, your workplace, or your broader community, survives on a certain amount of what he called managed blindness. There is this collective, entirely unspoken agreement among group members to just smooth things over. They agree to let uncomfortable truths go completely unaddressed, simply so that everyday cooperation can continue without friction.
And this brilliantly illustrates the bind you're in. You're essentially trapped between two worlds. On one side, we have the surface illusion. That's the comfortable narrative the group silently agrees to uphold. On the other side, we have the unspoken reality, the raw truth that you naturally decode. The problem is, as a differentiated perceiver, you just cannot automatically participate in that managed blindness. You notice the exact thing everyone else silently agreed not to notice. And when you refuse to play that game of pretend, or even when you just gently point out the reality, you're rarely thanked. Instead, you get labeled as negative, difficult, or told you're creating problems.
So the crucial point here is this psychological mechanism called shadow projection. Because the group refuses to acknowledge the uncomfortable reality, they take their unacknowledged flaws, fears, and tensions and project them directly onto you. Because they desperately refuse to look into the mirror, they attack the mirror instead. You become the scapegoat, simply because you disrupted their managed blindness by seeing things exactly as they actually are. Now, if you don't understand what's happening, the cost of possessing this unintegrated perception is honestly devastating. To survive these projections, you might learn to perform a fake sense of belonging, which leads straight to identity erosion. You absorb so much of the group's unconscious tension that you literally lose yourself. But the other extreme is just as dangerous. That's the prophet complex. This is where you become arrogant, rigid, and totally consumed by your own clarity, completely alienated from everyone, because you demand they see what you see. Honestly, both outcomes are a trap.
Section 3. The Solution. The Conscious Witness.
Jung didn't just diagnose this problem, though. He offered a way out. You have to transform from being an unconscious absorber into a conscious witness. Think of it like a highly trained first responder. They can step into a completely chaotic, incredibly stressful crisis and yet remain entirely functional. Why? Because they've built an internal structure strong enough to hold the weight of the moment without being destabilized by it. They witness the chaos, for sure, but they don't absorb it into their own nervous system.
To become that conscious witness, you have to build what Jung called your psychological container. And here are the practical steps to actually do it. Step 1 is usually the hardest. Stop indiscriminate truth-telling. Pointing out the truth to blind systems isn't wisdom, it's honestly just disruption. Step 2 requires immense psychological maturity. You have to learn to hold the truth quietly inside yourself, without that frantic, exhausting need to make everyone around you acknowledge it. You see what's happening, you let it be, and you remain grounded.
Which brings us to step 3, arguably the absolute most vital step for your long-term happiness. You must stop trying to explain your depth to people who are entirely committed to the surface. Instead, actively seek out what Jung called fellow individuated persons. These are the rare individuals who have actually done their own inner work. They aren't threatened by your clarity. Around them, you can finally take off the mask and stop exhausting yourself trying to perform ordinary.
If you have spent your whole life feeling isolated in crowded rooms, let Jung's words really sink in for a minute. Consciousness pioneer. You aren't broken. You're not too much. You are carrying an awareness that your family or your culture is simply too terrified to examine. Your life's work is not to lower your frequency to match the unconscious people around you. Your true work is to become equal to the profound gift you carry. I want to end this explainer with an unwavering challenge for you to reflect on today. Take a good look at your daily life right now. Which environment forces you into managed blindness? Where are you currently bleeding the most energy? Is it at those forced family dinners? Is it at your corporate job? Maybe within a specific friend group? Identifying and naming the specific environment that forces you to perform managed blindness is the absolute first step to reclaiming your psychological sovereignty. So ask yourself, how much longer are you willing to pretend you don't see the play for exactly what it is?